Most professionals are taught the same rule: be clear early, be thorough, and make sure nothing is misunderstood. That advice sounds responsible. However, in real workplaces, clarity only works when it arrives at the right moment. When it arrives too early, it changes how decisions treat you. Not emotionally or personally, but structurally. Here's the part most people never learn. Decision makers do not decide continuously. They move through phases, and clarity only belongs in one of them. If you want to change how decisions include you, you need to learn how to time clarity, not increase it. Let me show you how this actually works. Before decisions form, leaders are not choosing. They're scanning. They are watching who stabilizes ambiguity and who turns ambiguity into work. At this stage, they're not asking, is this correct? They're asking, does this help me move forward? When you introduce clarity during this phase, it creates effort before direction, and that effort has a cost. Decision makers will respond to cost immediately. So, here is the first timing rule. Do not clarify while a decision is still exploratory. Exploratory discussions are not about resolution. They are about range. Who speaks here is less important than how they speak. The professionals who stay included to do something specific, they signal understanding without closing anything. They reflect direction rather than detail. They let uncertainty exist. And this feels uncomfortable for people who equate clarity with competence. However, restraint here is what keeps you in the room. Now, here is the second timing rule. Clarity belongs at the narrowing point. You know a decision is narrowing when the language changes. You hear phrases like, between these options, or we need to decide whether, or even if we move forward. This is the moment clarity starts working for you, not before. At this point, decision makers are no longer scanning. They're choosing. Clarity now reduces friction instead of creating it. Here is how you apply that in practice. Early on, your contribution should sound like direction. You acknowledge trade-offs without resolving them. You confirm what matters without defining how it happens. You help the group stay oriented. Later, when narrowing begins, your contribution changes. Now you clarify only what forces a decision. Not everything you know, only what removes hesitation. That distinction is what changes outcomes. Let me give you a real-world example that most professionals may recognize. Imagine you're a part of a senior meeting where a new initiative is being discussed. There isn't any ownership assigned yet. There aren't any forms of approval yet, and there isn't a timeline in sight. Then, one person jumps in early and explains implications. They go into risks, dependencies, and what could go wrong. Everything they say is accurate. However, the room starts to slow. People may stop engaging. side conversations start, and the energy drops. The decision does not move forward. Later, that person wonders why they weren't included when things progressed. Now, imagine someone else behaves differently. Early on, they listen. When they speak, they summarize direction. They say what the discussion is trending toward, not what needs to be solved. They don't clarify yet. Then, later in the meeting, someone says, "We need to decide whether we move ahead." That's the moment to step in. They clarify one thing, not five, not the full picture, one thing that removes doubt. That intervention changes the decision, and that person gets pulled in again next time. This is how timing clarity changes inclusion. Decision makers remember who helped them decide. They also remember who made decisions heavier before they were ready. That memory shapes future invitations, quietly. This also shows up constantly in email. An early message that says, "I want to clarify all the implications so we're aligned," creates evaluation before a decision exists. Decision makers postpone. On the other hand, a message sent at the narrowing point that says, "There's one decision this needs alignment on," invites action. Same clarity, but different timing and a different outcome. Now, here's the part most professionals miss. When people feel excluded, they usually respond by explaining more. They think clarity will put them back in. However, this reinforces the pattern, because the problem was never lack of information. It was mistimed effort, and effort is what decision makers avoid when possible. So, here's the practical takeaway. If you want to change how decisions include you, speak lightly while direction is forming. Clarify only when choice is required. And deliver clarity as a tool of resolution, not understanding. When you do this consistently, something shifts. Decisions pause for you. Your input is sought at the right moment, and your influence increases without you pushing for it. Most professionals don't lose influence because they lack clarity. They lose it because they offer clarity at the wrong time. Once you learn how to time it, decisions start behaving differently around you. And that's when inclusion stops feeling unpredictable. It becomes structural.